Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Gulriz. I'm one of the members of Young Physician Committee. I've been part of the APPNA Young Physician Committee and the Dugana Young Physician Committee for the last quite a few years at this point. Today we have a session on mock interviews and a few other things that we can discuss. It will be an open forum. People can ask whatever questions they want. But first, we'll start off with some interview prep, because that's something that's going on right now. We have Dr. Faraz S. Alam, who is a West Virginia hospitalist physician, physician advisor and a vice chair medicine staff. He has been part of the team for the last probably like 4 years at this point as well. Actually 8 years. He has been part of this team for quite some time. So I'll be asking him to come on stage and he can go over some slides, tips mostly, and things to do and not to do during your interview sessions.
Thank you, Doris. Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Alam, and thank you, Doris, for the introductions. Been with YPC for 8 years, trying to help medical students try to attain residencies. And I did do a more lengthy presentation on mock interviews, which is on the APPNA YPC page. This is more of a condensed version. But if you guys have any more questions, you can go on the YPC website. So just to narrow it down, this is interview season, and we're trying to talk about interview musts and how you should conduct yourself. And some of the things that goes without saying, but one of them is to be very professional. Sometimes from people overseas, this is their first job interview and they haven't had much experience with jobs. So sometimes this is a little bit overlooked on how to conduct yourself in interviews. Be on time. Sometimes, we do these things to practice with students, and many times students are kind of late to show up on interview times. And so we say always be on time, if not be a little bit early. It's very advisable. One thing is always be yourself. I know people get very nervous with interviews, and it's a very natural process. But program directors, and I'm sure you'll hear from them today, they can see past people who are just not being themselves and not being real. So just be yourself, and hopefully that'll get you somewhere. Be personable, be energetic, be communicative, and be courteous. Also be confident. Program directors definitely like confident individuals, because you have to make confident decisions for patients' lives throughout 3 years of residency. So that in that moment shows them who you are. Maintain good eye contact and greet by title always. Always greet by their title initially, because you don't know them. Maybe down the road, if someone says, call me this, call me that, that's okay. But initially, you always want to say doctor and, Miss, Mrs., Miss, Mr., all that good stuff. And same thing when you're coming into the interview, maintain a good handshake, be strong. Just that also asserts, your confidence level. Also, a lot of times people take residents out to dinners with other residents, and a lot of it is a test to see how you are in a social setting. So don't go, this isn't fun times with your friends. This is to be still part of the interview process. And then just kind of going over those things, like we talked about what we should do, and then this is pretty self-explanatory what we shouldn't do. Being unprofessional, being someone you're not, acting like someone you're not, lacking confidence, lacking enthusiasm, not showing any interest in the program. Sometimes we go on interview cycles and we know that we are not totally interested in this program because we may be going to another program, but you still have to be professional. They took time out to give you an interview. That's someone else's interview. That could have been someone else's interview. So even if you're not interested, just show that you're interested and be professional in that manner. And just don't be disrespectful. Poor communication for virtual interviews, poor camera lighting. Make sure you practice beforehand with a friend or family member. Unprofessional background, sometimes I see people with like palm trees in the back. A good white background is very, I think, standard. Not maintaining good eye contact. When you're doing virtual interviews, you're looking down or you're looking on your phone. Make sure you're looking straight into the camera so people know that you're paying attention to them. We talked about not having a weak handshake or bad posture. Don't slouch. And just be aware of your social awareness and your surroundings. And these are some things on virtual interviews: good camera focus, good lighting, be punctual, good internet connection, good Zoom and Teams setup, professional appearances, wear professional attire, no background noise, professional background, practice Zoom sessions with someone that we talked about, and good camera angle is important. Sometimes you want to make sure beforehand you're not looking too high, too low, that they're seeing you. Thank you. That's all I have for now. Just remember, this is a job interview. And any questions, you can go on the website to YPC, see the full PowerPoint presentation. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you very much, Faraz. Good morning and Assalamualaikum everyone. This is Dr. Quran. I'm the chair of the Young Physician Committee here at APPNA South Texas chapter. I welcome you all here on behalf of the chapter, and I'm glad to have a central presence from YPC also. I will have just a panel of a few program directors that will join, and then we only have a few students or applicants here, but you are welcome to ask any questions you may have. We have 4 program directors and faculty in our panel today, so I'll invite them all to come and take a seat, and then maybe each and one of them, they can go on and talk about, share their words about the interviews. So since this is about the interviews overall, as this is the peak interview season going on, and I think this is the perfect time that you guys can learn from the faculty about what exactly the program directors and faculty sees during your interviews. So let's start with, I'll invite our first panelist, Dr. Sara Andrabi. She's the Assistant Program Director of Emergency Medicine at Henry Jane Top Department of Emergency Medicine, and also Associate Medical Director of Emergency Center at Ben Top Hospital in Harris Health System, and she's Assistant Professor at Baylor also. Welcome, Dr. Sara. Good to have you here. Then I have Dr. Mohan Ashraf. He is also chair of Central YPC. He's co-chair of the APPNA Education Committee and program director of General Psych and Addiction Medicine Fellowship Programs at KCU GME Consortium Ozark Center, and also associate professor of clinical psychiatry at University of Missouri. Thank you, Nama. Good to have you here. Then I have Dr. Sadiq Naveed. He's the program director of Eastern Connecticut Health Network and psychiatry program director, associate professor of psych at University of Connecticut. He's also ex-chair of YPC, and he did a great, amazing job last year also. Good to have you, Dr. Sadiq. Last, I have Dr. Farid Khan here. We'll have him in the panel too. So I'll start with
Just a second. So everyone on the Zoom, we will take the answers in the end because logistically it will be too difficult to keep an eye on both the sides, but hopefully everybody should be able to see everything.
So we can do it. I mean, since it's a smaller crowd, we can do it interactive, or we can just start maybe with each of you guys. Sarah, if you would like to come, please, and then just share. Yeah, if you can give them the mic. Just share your opinion as a program director or faculty. What do you see overall in applicants, and what are the do's and do nots, especially in the interviews when you're interviewing? Thank you.
Hi guys, good morning. Like I said, my name is Sara Andrabi. So I actually am what I call a Baylor inbred. I went there for med school, I trained there for residency and fellowship, and then stayed on as faculty. So I've kind of seen one institution inside out and seen kind of what they look for within applicants. And I think one thing that's kind of pervasive throughout doing this over so many years is usually it boils down to 3 things, which is service, education, leadership, right? You want to make sure you have those 3 buckets kind of build in terms of when you're trying to be a strong applicant, regardless of I think what you're trying to go into. EM is really, really interesting in the sense that we used to be a very competitive specialty, and in the past 2 years we've actually had a drop in our applicants, and there's been an uptake in IMG applicants, which I think is really nice. Brings up a new opportunity for a lot of IMGs who are applying into residency in the States. For us, I think a lot of the stuff that was mentioned on that PowerPoint, as far as interview tips, were really helpful. It's very easy for us, once you get to the interview process, like this program wants to talk to you, right? They're interested in you, they want to know you. So once you get to that part, you should just be yourself. For us, it's very easy, because in our department, in our field, we have to make judgments very quickly. So it doesn't take us very long to figure out if somebody's being authentic or not. I think the other big thing I would also advise on that wasn't mentioned was if you put something in your application, make sure A, it's true, and B, you're able to speak to it, right? Like even small things like I speak XYZ languages, you may have an interviewee who speaks that language and they may speak to you in that language. I had that happen to me, because I put Urdu down and I had it when I was interviewing and they just started talking in Urdu just to see if I actually knew it, and that was true. So just be careful about things like that. But I'm gonna hand it off to the next person now.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I think I'll echo whatever Dr. Nabi said. She's covered a lot of things. One important thing in these interviews and how we are going through the matches is that it's become very comparative. There are so many applicants. It's very hard to pick from who is the right candidate. So one thing that program would look at is that your CV has to be aligned. So all your experiences should be in one field. So it's more important for the people applying, say, in the future than right now, because you're already in the midst of the interview season. But having different experiences here and there, they no longer get you a good number of interviews. So that's what we have heard. People are struggling with getting interviews. It's all programs will get 800, 900 applications minimum, even they have 3-4 spots, and they have to go through, they'll find out which one is better. So they will use all these filters and criteria to narrow it down. And then even if they narrow it down and there are 200, 300 applications, then it comes down to who is really excited about the field, who should be interviewed. Once they send out the interview, as Dr. Nabi said, then the half of the battle is won. Now your job is not to sort of mess it up, know your CV and be truthful, be honest. You don't want to say anything that's not true. This is a social media age. A lot of people can find out what's going on. You have friends, there are people, they know you. And we have seen that it happens in a lot of programs. So just be honest, know your CV. If you've mentioned anything research-wise or otherwise that you were part of any trial, it's a fair game. Anything you mentioned, they can ask you about it. So I think that's what I would add. I think most of the things have been covered, and good luck with the match.
Thank you. And it's very difficult to be the last one because everything else that needs to be said has been said. So you have to say something different. I think, if you ask most of the people in this room who have been through the residency process, this is the most anxiety-provoking situation, probably one of the most anxiety-provoking situation that we all have been through, hands down. And I think most people would agree with that. So first, have a recognition that this is an emotional roller coaster. You're gonna feel energetic one day, and next day you're gonna feel down. So be aware of those emotions that you're gonna go through. So it's very important for you to connect with your support system, the support system that cheers you up, support system that gives you good advice, and keep going. Also, I want to highlight, the interviews, though most of the interviews probably, have been sent at this time, but we are probably in second month of a process that goes into for 4 months. So we are just in the middle. One thing for IMGs that happens is, or at least that is happening at my program too, and we are newer program. The last year, if you look at the NRMP maths data, there was 1,000 more applications compared to the previous year. There were 500 more spots. This year has been a little bit difficult for IMGs, and I will not talk as a program director. I know very good candidates who got only 3 to 4 interviews at this time. I don't know the reason. Maybe as a PDs, we are not doing a good job of, maybe we are all inviting the same people. So what I can advise you is take care of your emotional wellness. Keep doing things that cheers you up, that relax you down. Second thing is stay clinically active. If it doesn't mean that if you have applied, job is done, stay clinically active. connect with people, talk to people, use the resources that you have in your pocket. Send a letter of interest. Don't send too often. I think once a month is more than enough. The letter of interest has very low yield, but you need only few more interviews to match. So reach out to those programs. One thing that may happen is, as probably AMGs are getting more interviews, and if they get enough, if they cancel, then there would be more spots open there for IMG. So do those things. And then, Dr. Faraz Alam really, highlighted key points in the interviews. If a program invites you for interview, we very rarely do courtesy interviews. I can count on my one finger the courtesy interviews that I have done, maybe one at this time. If you are invited to a residency interview, they are looking at you at their potential resident. So if you're not giving it your best shot, then that's where you need to focus on. And frankly speaking, you all need only one spot to match. You don't need 10 or 15. So even if it is one interview, give it the best shot that you can. And Dr. Faraz has already highlighted that. I think it's time to take questions.
Give me one. So let me introduce our fourth panelist, Dr. Khan. He was just stuck in traffic. We're glad to have you. So Dr. Farid Ahmed Khan, he is the ex-program director at the Family Medicine. Currently, is the professor and vice chair at Baylor College of Medicine, and he's also assistant chief of staff and ambulatory care service at Harris Health System. Good to have you, sir. Please join us in the panel.
Okay, I'm sorry, everyone.
No problem. If you would like to add anything, Dr. Khan, our theme here is really what you look into the applicants when you're interviewing, and you being the program director for quite some time, you could share some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what you just said was spot on. The first thing is you have to take care of yourself. I think that was it's a long haul sometimes. It's not luck. You've already succeeded up to this point. Now, all you need to do is score that interview, and that is your hurdle. That is going to be your hurdle wherever. There are many incentives for program directors not to take IMGs, but the reality is that 50% of all doctors in the US are still IMGs, and that we continually take IMGs. What has happened, and what you need to know, what your opposition is, that there are lots of new medical schools here in the United States. And so, as such, you're going to be older graduates, because you're going to have that visa hurdle or that hurdle to come to the United States, having done your USMLEs, and there may be some time gap. So if you use what was just advised to you, that you use it to efficiently have a clinical story that builds. Okay, and it's not that you said, oh, can I work in Sugar Land with Dr. X, that may add to it because it shows that you're continually working. But what you really need to do is have a story. And that story is within you. Why did you become a doctor? What other things? My daughter had a tough time getting into medical school in the United States. But I always told her she will get into medical school in the United States, and she'll get in well, because she had worked with 4 of the 5 largest refugee agencies. She had been down to Honduras 30 times because she had wanted to work and volunteer. So whatever you do, if you own your story, if you own and walk the walk, if you were in Bharat, in Pakistan, which has almost no access to care, and you did something there, then walk it tall. It may not be the clinical experience that you wanted, but you walk tall on the shoulders of all these experiences. If there were, I graduated from Pakistan 30 some odd years ago, almost 40 years ago. I'm aging myself. So I'm dating myself, but what I'm trying to tell you is I was so impressed with the outpatient departments at Civil Hospital at that time that were miserable, in the sense that the patients had to reach through gates. That was part of my personal story. No one reads personal stories. I'm sorry. They only read it at a certain point But at that point, you're in the interview and you can then hammer home all the stories, but you have to own it. You cannot apologize for who you are or where you're from. That is never an accepted. You are always telling them where you're going. I'm going to be the program director of this program. If you have that kind of gumption, you should say that. But if you don't have that, you just want to say, I really want to practice in this. And know the fields and where they're going. So if you know family medicine is now all about quality of care and what are patient-centered medical home qualities, and within that, what are those? So that's diabetes, getting the A1Cs below 9, that's a problem in the United States. What are the tactics for obesity? There's so many things, hypertension and combination medicines, what the American Heart Association, American Medical Association says. So from my perspective, know the field that you're doing, because you have to score that interview. Scoring that interview, again, as you said, is not a charity event. It's not going to be like, please, can you get me one? There is nothing like that in the United States. You're competing against a lot of people, but they will give it to you on your merit. Once you get into that, it's 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7 chances that you will get. And I don't think you're discriminated against. And if it's a program that discriminates, then what's the point of even getting in? So I recently heard some horror stories that I never heard before of people being let go in their seconds and third years because of funding or whatever. So those things we don't worry about. We worry about where your fate and where your journey and where your own stuff is. I think you'll get there. I have no qualms about that. I believe the United States is a pretty fair society and it's the best training. So I've sort of rambled through some of my thoughts just having heard this. I'm sorry, some of these themes must have been repeated before. So we'll take questions.
Sure, thank you very much, Dr. Khan. So why don't we take questions first from the.
Before we proceed, because one of the thoughts that Dr. Khan shared was, we get this question, me and Sadiq bhai always end up getting this question, like, experiences back home matter or not? And frankly, every experience that you walk in with matters at the end of the day. People go like, should we do house job or not? It's 1 year clinical experience in a very deprived society. It makes you a much better person and then gives you a story to talk about during your interview. So I really recommend people to do that house jobs because it teaches you a lot. It teaches you actual medicine, how things are done. So that was one thought I had because it's probably going to come as a question soon.
So why don't we take all questions from the audience? If you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask anyone here, and in the meantime, you can also monitor Zoom if there's any questions.
There are questions there, but I prepared some questions as well.
I would like to ask, I think the question that from all of you guys that we commonly get is so-called the behavioral questions. Now you have two psych folks also in the panel. So what you guys are really looking for in those like answers, like, okay, how did you handle conflict and all that, things like that. What are you guys really looking for? What kind of answers, not exactly answers, but as a candidate, what are you really looking for? Why don't we start with Sara? Like, I mean, have you come across such, do you ask such questions like where, you know, the candidates can be stressed out? Because those are the common questions. How do we answer that? And people are, you know, reading from the forums and they are faking things, which obviously is not, should not be the case. So.
Yeah, we definitely do ask, we call it the 2 a.m. test, right? Who's going to be on shift with me at 2 a.m. in the morning in a busy ER that I'm going to be able to work with, right? Because teamwork and all of that conflict management is very crucial in an emergency department. I work at a county hospital. We're a trauma center. We are super busy. It's nonstop. You're working in high-risk situations with some physicians you don't know that well, right? Like the trauma teams come down and things like that with your nurses. And so you have to be able to trust and communicate very quickly in an efficient manner that doesn't come across as offensive. And so for us, I do typically ask some of those like conflict management questions. I'll ask like, what was the last time you were angry about something? When was the last time someone made you do something you didn't want to do? How did you do it? How did you manage, right? Some of those things, because those do come up in our setting. And so we want to make sure that we have individuals who can handle that kind of situation, that kind of environment, because the ED is a different environment. I will say be honest though, because it becomes very apparent very quickly when someone is not saying something that's from the heart, right? When it comes to those questions are part of your story. So they have to come from real experiences, right? The minute you start making something up, it becomes very obvious. I can tell very quickly if I ask about like detail-oriented questions and they tend to be vague or something like that. So make sure it's truthful, I think, what you speak about in that regard.
Yeah, so back in the days, there was one question that was very common, right? Tell me about your weaknesses or 3 weaknesses. And the idea was that I'll put you on the back foot. And then what they're trying to see is, do you have the capacity to self-reflect or not? Every one of us has some areas that we are working on, areas of improvement. You during the interview season, you can sit down and think about yourself. You can ask other people, hey, give me some feedback, honest feedback about what do you like about me, what are some of the things I can work on. So you'll have an idea, you can talk about it in the interview. But what happens if these questions challenge your narcissism, right? So the wrong answer always is that I don't have any weaknesses. But all other answers are fine. They just want to see if they put you in a difficult spot, how do you handle it under stress? How do you come back from it? So the question that Dr. Puram was asking, if you had a conflict, so now that has evolved. It used to be weakness, now there's no limit. They can go anywhere and can ask you about any of the behavioral question. But the idea is they want to bring something that you are unprepared for, put you on the spot and see how do you answer. And the best way is you can say, oh, that's an interesting question. Give me a second to think about it. That's fine, but don't take very long pause. And then you can just say, well, I'm going to give it my best shot and then tell your answer, and that's fine. That gives you buy some time, think about the question, and then you, whatever your honest explanation is about it, you give it. So like, particularly about the conflicts, how would you resolve a conflict with a senior? Well, the best way is effective communication. You first go talk to them and understand that what was the conflict about. Be respectful, be humble, and start that conversation. So I think that would give you something to talk about, and then interviewer may have other questions. So the best thing is take it in, relax. If you want to buy 1 or 2 or 3 seconds, you can buy those, and then do your best in that situation. Dr. Said Naveed has an example, if he wants to share a really live example about it, that can highlight some of these points.
I slept only 5 hours, so you have to get me some hint about that.
We have a lot of questions.
So I think, when it comes to, there are core competencies, one of 2 core competencies that are really hard to remediate is professionalism and interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
The conflict question is a question that I always ask, you're working in a team, you're always gonna have conflict. How do you handle that conflict? That's what matters. If you feel like, you know it all, and, next person is completely wrong, then, that's a problem. We live in a society where we have shared perspective, everyone is bringing their best to the team. That's the mindset you should go into. So I think we need to change our cultural habits a little bit. And be nice to everyone, be courteous to everyone. No one likes being yelled at, whether it's a resident, whether it's a nurse. This is a common issue that we are seeing, and I say with a lot of respect and love for my community, IMG community. In the last 1 month, I've been aware of 3 resident incidents, Pakistani residents who got in trouble at their program. A lot of it has to do with interpersonal skills and professionalism. So we need to change in a lot of ways how we think and how we, and I'm not saying that everyone who is an IMG has this trouble. There are a few, and that's why we ask those questions. How are you in those questions? How are you handling yourself under stress? How are you going to navigate that situation in the future? So that's why those questions are asked.
Let's take some questions online, and then we can get some input from the audience also.
So one question was like, what goes into the interview evaluation process? Like, how is the candidate being evaluated while the interviews happening? We can ask on that question.
Sure. I think that most of the evaluation has been done before you get there. And often it is your scores or your experiences. There isn't anything more about that. These things about your being able to be a team player or being professional are the only things that are evaluated. at the time. So scores, unfortunately, because of manpower issues, are the first thing. When I was program director, I read all 1,200 essays. That's the ones that we screened that came under our threshold. Now it's about 1,500. But I can tell you, even at our program, no one's reading the essays now. We're making a cutoff, and one of the cutoffs is regional, because we know people don't go far. I know that IMGs do go far, they go anywhere, but that is another issue that we are looking at. So there may be programs that are much more quote unquote IMG friendly because they need you, but a lot of the screening is done with errors. If we have to ask for something, we have to clarify something. Another screening that our program uses, which I'm sure that many programs do not use, is we ask you to fill out the Texas licensure application. So if there's anything that won't allow you to license, why would we interview you? So we actually send that forward, and it has some personal questions. You don't have to answer those for our program. So there are some things that will say, you know, whatever it is, your health issues or behavioral health issues or whatever, those don't need to be answered. So our screening is all done prior to that. What we are evaluating in the interview is your ability to communicate, your 6 core competencies. For us, it's more than like 8 or 9 core competencies, including, you know, being a good adult learner and being someone who is aware of quality of care and so on and so forth. So, yeah, sorry.
We can ask, can I add something to that? So I can vaguely tell you about, you know, what this our scoring matrix looks like. So as far as score goes, you know, scores are very, very small part of it. It's an important part. I think our total score is 27 and only 3 are for USMLE scores. Rest of it, there are some parts, like Dr. Khan was saying, that are being assessed before even you walk into the room, just looking at your application. But you can still make up for that, and we look for, because we program director for a psychiatry program, so we look for your psychological mindedness and your commitment to the specialty. And the reason for that is, if you look at the last year's NRMP survey, for psychiatry program directors, commitment to the specialty is one of the highest ranked factor. We look for communication skills, leadership skills, and some other qualities that a learner should have. We look for that. I remember a candidate, she's among our top ranked candidates at this time. She's an American graduate, and her USMLE scores were somewhere in the middle, but she is at this time top ranked because she did exceptionally well in the interview. The same goes for an IMG too. She did exceptionally well in the interview. She has some past experience in psychiatry, and she is among our top 4 or 5 people at this time.
Sorry, so we do look at letters from family medicine programs. Very, very clear. Sorry, it's been a while since I actually screened. So that's one thing. We also look in the letters for how well someone knows you, or what your reputation, where you're coming from is. And we're also looking for, they have to mention family medicine or primary care or something for our program. Because if that is not mentioned, or the exact opposite is mentioned, even if it may be a primary care field like pediatrics, that just says they didn't know you and you're out. So some of those letters cannot be generic. I think we have generic and then we can mail it to everyone. But I think you highlighted that point and I forgot that. It actually is an automatic no.
So I can take more questions.
Just 2 points not mentioned. One is, so you can have a really good application and everything looks good, but if you're not a good fit for the program, so that doesn't mean that you should get discouraged. So as Dr. David was saying, it's 27 points. You may score 24 out of it, but you're not a good fit for the program, which is an overall feeling, and that's what we are trying to find out. If the rest of the group of residents cannot work with you, if there's a feeling this person, we may not be able to coach this person. So that's also one of the factors. So that's why working on your personality, working on your communication skills, that becomes really important for the interview. Yes, we'll take it.
Real quick, so I don't know about you guys, but like, we're still doing Zoom for our interviews, like all the EM interviews are being done by Zoom. But one of the small things to mention, apart from what actually happens on the interview day, is a lot of them will have pre-interview socials, and now because they're on Zoom, it's a little bit harder, right? It's a lot easier to be off camera, it's a lot easier not to say anything, but that's actually something we discuss as part of our interview day too. We figure out who was on the socials, who was interacting, because that's when the residents really get to work, kind of talk to in an informal setting, not in front of educational leadership, to see if you're gonna be that fit for the program. If you made it to the interview, you've checked enough boxes, right? The program likes you on paper. Now they just want to get a feel for your personality and see if you're a fit for their program.
So while we take more questions, again, in the audience, just raise your hand if you guys have any questions.
So essentially, to sum it up, it's a complex process. It's a make and break. Do well on your interview and don't take it lightly. You pretty much touched upon the second question I had prepared. It's like, what is the role of residents in the whole interview process? Because now we are having Zoom socials, which is essentially like sitting in front of a computer, eating your own food with other people who are eating their own food. So what's the process? What usually is the process for that sort of an evaluation done when somebody's not seeing you in person and it's all happening over this? So I think you can answer this question because it looks like you're already having it.
Yeah, we already do this a lot. So I think just like basic etiquette on, like, have your cameras on, kind of interact, like if they're asking questions, be involved in that. We actually have for our socials, we have like a 10-15 minute portion at the beginning where at least one of the program directors or APDs will be on to take any questions. And then these are for the before interview season starts. And then once interview season starts, none of the educational leadership will be on there because you'll see them the next day on Zoom anyways. So I think just being interactive, being yourself, because we have residents involved in both. So they run the pre-interview socials, but we usually have at least one chief who interviews every interview day. And so that's something we'll ask them too. We'll see like what their feel for that applicant was, and if there's any concerns, the second follow-up question is, well, how are they on the pre-interview social? Like if there's, because at that point, it's really about kind of your personality, your social skills, things like that. That's what they're trying to gauge.
I think every program is also different, right? So I know many residents every year, like some programs have a very high reliance on the resident feedback also, while some program may not have that much of feedback from the resident. And I know personally so many programs, especially in pathology, that many residents told me, a chief resident or someone, that we just couldn't connect to that candidate, and eventually they will not be ranked, versus others. The residents put in a very strong word and they were ranked.
Be nice to the coordinators too.
Yeah.
The course coordinators are the program director's best friends. If you mess with our course coordinator, that's it.
Everyone is important.
Yeah,
That's really
like-
just remember. We can move on and see if there are live questions.
Just wanted to add to that and also ask a question about coaching, because a lot of times for IMGs, especially from Pakistan, like this is their first job interview. And it's almost not fair to have your first job interview when you're in your mid-20s sometimes. Whereas in the US, when I did rotations, I was interviewing for medical receptionist job, like just side jobs that I was doing. So besides our guidance, like, do you guys recommend any coaching programs for people, or just like videos that you tell your residents to watch and see? Because a lot of times we're so fixated on merit back home, and that's all people think about, and they don't worry about anything else that comes with what you guys are saying. Like, how can you be part of the program? Sometimes we're like, well, I scored so high, I'm a good fit for this program. But there's other things that people can do to also fit into a program.
Right. So, I mean, it's important. And, back in the days, we used to tell people before the social media hype is stand in front of the mirror and practice, see how you look, how you sound. And you probably, when you grew up, you guys heard about it. When you're preparing for a debate competition, do it in front of the mirror, do it with another partner and get their feedback. Now, fortunately, lots of resources are available. You go on YouTube, you find out, just say anything and tons of resources will come up. APPNA has their own channel. YPC has tons of webinars you can find there. Our Facebook group has this, and that is the reason we started our mock interviews, which I think for us has been part of a good race. They were leading the effort, and we provided about 800 one-on-one interviews. So that's the opportunity for even for next year. So if you sign up early, you get the mentor, you can practice those one-on-one interviews and then get coaching, and then that mentor has a relationship with you. So you have questions and you have interviews, they can help you out. So yeah, I would 100% agree that you need the coaching. Interpersonal skill is important. Language, I think a lot of program that we hear from, they are like, your English is not good and you cannot communicate. It's a problem for us to take you because you have to practice in the US. So I think these things, probably all the preparation should start third year, fourth year of medical school. And we are working on putting together a guide on that. So you know what you're into and how you have to prep yourself.
Let me take a question from audience. You have a question, right? No.
Good morning. I have several questions, but for etiquette, I'll just start with one. For interview types, we usually practice and prepare for a structured interview, but there's also unstructured interviews. Do you guys have tips to deal with that?
So I think, you know, we really want to engage in a conversation, and have a genuine, honest conversation. If you go with that mindset, that would help you from that standpoint. I think the basic things are very same and simple. Have an eye contact. I know that there's so much eye contact you can do on the Zoom. But if I'm talking to you and you're looking down all the time, you know, throughout the interview, then it seems like, and I understand that, you know, this is, there is an early anxiety, but what we have seen is that subsides within 2 to 3 minutes within the interview. But if you're constantly looking down and not looking up at me, then it means that you are someone who's gonna struggle under stress a lot. And residency programs, jobs can be stressful at times, most of the times. The second thing is when I'm talking to you, whether you're hearing me or listening me. So if you're just hearing me and you want to answer the question in a way that you prepared during your mock interviews. So I would just suggest that, you know, have a good night's sleep, be nice, have a smile on face like you meet someone, be ready for an elevator pitch, know your CV very well, and know about the program very well. A lot of time, and I know this comes out of the anxiety, we ask safe questions from the program. I have, our program is very new. We send, you know, pre-interview PowerPoint presentation that has detail of the program. We have website, I'm out on the social media. I'm a familiar face. If you're asking me the same generic question, I have trouble with that. Because I sent you a PowerPoint, it says electives, you know, you can ask me questions about, okay, what does electives mean? So just go with that mindset, you know, just prepare well and go from there. And there are times you're gonna stumble, which is okay, we all do, but how you approach the interview, that's what matters.
Take another question from the audience here. Go ahead, Dr. Khan, you want to add something?
No, I think that the issue is, you're there, you have that one shot to impress. But how do you impress people if you're sitting in a plane and sitting next to someone and you have a conversation? It's a conversation, right? I'm from Pakistan, I'm going for an interview, whatever. It take the conversation for the cues that the person is giving you and have a conversation and look at them. So it's not such a big deal that we have to deliver every point at that time, because otherwise you're saying, I haven't said this, they don't know this about me. And that adds to your stress. Whatever it is, I mean, I always joke, I mean, one of the things that I tell the person is, if all your questions were already answered before, because we also give them a pre-talk, then we can talk about everything that you like or everything that you don't like. And I'll tell you, I dislike drawing. And I said that up front. I get a laugh out of it. Then the last interviewee on Thursday said to me, then you cannot talk to my dad. And that was it. I mean, it was a great icebreaker. She gave me the answer back. So it depends on how strict they are and how formal they want to be, or obviously address them by name, and so on and so forth. But just use the analogy of sitting in a train or a plane, and you're sitting next to someone you don't know, and it requires a level of formality. You can't say, hey, that's funny, you don't do that. So the same thing is what you do is mutual respect, professionalism, and the questions have to be really spontaneous, or they have to know the program very well. So, I'm trying to do cardiology. I'm now coming into internal medicine. How many of your graduates have really gone through cardiology? Do you prepare us? Those kinds of things.
Good, thank you. You have a question?
Yes. Thank you very much, first of all, for conducting such a wonderful meeting here. I'm Hafiz Ghani, I'm a PGY2 from UTM Galveston. And recently I've been conducting some of the mock interviews, helping some of the applicants. And the two most frequent questions that I've encountered, I'm gonna put in front of our expert panelists. Number one, when they are interviewing at those big academic centers, the future interest, when this question comes in, they ask, what are your future goals, academia, community, or private practice? How to tackle that, considering my program, where I know that if somebody says other than academia, they're already ruled out. That first question. And the second one, Dr. Duman actually put some light on, but this is regarding the weakness part of the question. When they ask you about weaknesses, the applicants are so afraid that they're going to be judged on, and they're going to be, it's going to be a make or break kind of deal. Any specific examples, if you guys could give? That's all. Thank you.
So there was a candidate last year, and I have to go for another panel discussions on residency, so I'll leave in the next 5 minutes. So there was a candidate last year. She gave really good example of a weakness, and that's why you need to do mock interviews so your mentors can guide you and teach you. And you can sense that around her. So I did Twitter spaces with her, and so she said that I bring in a lot of energy in whatever setting I am. And energy in a positive way, like talking to other people, engaging other people. And that can annoy some people. So that was something different. Everyone, if I ask candidates at this time, what's your weakness? Half of you are going to say I'm a perfectionist. Because that has been written all over. This is a safe weakness to say. So just really sit by yourself and talk to people who really know you and ask them, what are my strengths and my weaknesses? And then talk with your mentors. This is the weakness that I should mention or I should not mention, and go from there. I don't think it's a good idea to say a weakness. I have interpersonal skill issue. I don't get along with people. Well, you're not fit to work in a team environment then. What was your first question?
Future
It was about
goals.
academia versus private practice.
Yeah.
What do you
So I think first thing that you can do is read the mission statement of the program. My opinion is a little bit different. I don't know what other people would say. Be honest throughout this process. So if you want to be in academia, and you can say that, at this time, I don't have a lot of exposure of the field. And as I get into the residency program, I'll know more and what I want to do. But at this time, I see myself doing this, and it may change. There is a wrong myth that exists that community programs don't like scholarly activities, right? They don't like research and stuff like that. So write a separate personal statement for community programs. community programs don't have a lot of research resources. They cannot give you 60% time off or to do research. But one thing the community program struggles with is scholarly activities. So if you can be that champion, I want you in my program and I will make you a star. One of the citations we received from initial program accreditation is actually scholarly activities, because none of my faculty has any publication, it's only me. So that becomes an issue.
And now I would also like to mention my personal opinion also here, and you as a candidate, you need to research yourself about your specialty and about the program, right? For example, I was talking to one of my students last year. He was applying for pathology, and he told me that in an actual interview, when they asked him what he's gonna do in 5 years, and he said he's gonna be a hospitalist. You can never be a hospitalist after pathologist, right? So just know what your plans would be. I'm gonna take up some comments from the audience if I can. We have some faculty here who would like to comment.
Good morning. I'm Rizwan Malik. I'm a pulmonologist and I've been in academics for a long time. I think for all the students who are residents, faculty has given you really good ideas, but remember, you guys are brilliant already. I mean, you got there because you were the best of the best. They have chosen you. Most likely you will not know everything they asked you, but they're looking for a mold who can become a good physician later. If they ask you a question, you have no idea, you just smile and say, I'm sorry, I just don't know. Or if they ask you about some research, just say, I want to learn more about it during the program. Self-awareness and arrogance does not go well. So if you don't know something, just say, I don't know. And also do tell about your positive points, but faculty made a good point. They're not there to essentially dissect you. If you just listen to them before you answer, I think you will know what they're asking exactly, and then you can give the answer in a respectful, humble, but still confident manner. Dress well for the interview, don't look sloppy, it just gives a very poor impression. Our impression is created as soon as the candidate walks in the door, so do not mess that up. I think you guys are already very good, so do understand your strengths are much more than your weaknesses. Bit of humbleness, preparation, anxiety, and saying, I don't know, that's why I'm going to do this residency. If I knew everything, I wouldn't be doing this interview. So I mean, don't say that literally. It's metaphorically, that's the point you have made.
And I think you can turn the question back around on them, right? And be like, okay, like it is too early, because we have folks doing all the time. Some of them know they want to do academics, some want to do community, some don't know, and that's okay. That's what residency is for, right? And I think you can turn the question back on and be like, okay, well, what kind of resources do you offer for residents who want to do community practice? Or what kind of resources do you offer for residents who want to do academics? And I bet you they'll be dying to tell you about all the stuff they have, right? Because that is part of our job as program directors. We're supposed to be able to set people up for success, no matter what practice they decide to go into. At least that's our goal, like whether you want to do community or academic, and the pendulum swings a lot in EM from year to year. But we want to set you up for success no matter what practice environment you want to go into.
So we're going to last 4 minutes actually. We have next session coming in.
So do you guys want to do a rapid fire round?
Let's just ask a couple questions online.
Just do a rapid fire. Just
So, one of the question is, should we ask the PDs what question should we ask the interviewers, especially if everything is already mentioned on the website?
Right, so ask them about what they've done. Everybody likes, if you massage their ego, they're gonna like it. So ask them, you've been the leader of this program, what kind of changes you've brought to the program? Where do you see this program is gonna go in the next 3-5 years under your leadership? That's a great question. Let them talk. Get them to talking, and then you can ask about their strength, changes they have made, things they're looking forward to, any changes that are coming up for the program that may affect their training. Then they can talk about if there's a faculty change. It's always okay to ask about board pass rate, where do your graduates go, because you want to know if you graduate from this program, where you're going to go. So these questions are fair.
Next question.
Can you get matched on a courtesy interview?
Yes, you can. I mean, it's about, again, as I said in the beginning, it's very hard to get interviewed. There are excellent candidates, they cannot get interviewed. The art right now is to make yourself visible to the department so they can give you the interview. If I have 1,000 applications, I will have a strict criteria, as everyone has mentioned before, filters and all that, so we may not see you, we don't know when you're over there. So you need to make sure yourself visible, externships, observership, research, go to the conferences. And maybe you know somebody in my program and that person says, hey, I know this guy is good, give them an interview. That may be courtesy, but you are great. So hopefully if you review it, you'll get an interview. Now, if you get a courtesy interview and you have holes in your CV, that's a totally different story. Yeah.
Last chance from the audience, last 2 minutes. Anyone from the audience? If not, Gurez, go ahead. Any next question? That's gonna be the last one. You have a question, and you have a question. Okay.
First of all, thank you so much for everyone organizing this seminar. So my question is, what the program look in the personal statement? Some of the mentors say just write the personal experiences in your life, how you became a physician, why you're pursuing the medicine. And some of the mentors say they don't care about your personal life nowadays. They say just write your experiences, what you did. But the same thing we are already in the CV. So it's confusing, like what to do, like what the program is looking in this personal statement.
I'll be honest, Ian, we're very like quick and dirty. So like if the personal statement doesn't grab me in the first paragraph, I'm skimming over the rest of it. But it can be, I think it just has to come from your heart, right? Whether it's a clinical experience that was meaningful, whether it was something outside of that that's meaningful, that's also personal statement is a great place if you do have holes in your application, or there was remediation, or you had to take something over again. That's a great place to address that stuff as well, to talk about whatever that hardship was that you had that you overcame. So I think those kinds of things you can tell.
So you've had a journey up to this point, whatever that journey is. And what are your motivations to come into the US, for example? What are your motivations for changing your career? Maybe you did an OBGYN residency and now you're going to primary care. It needs to not be just about your life. But if someone suffered, I have a daughter who's deaf and blind. I'm always going to write about what all I learned about the specialty of transitional medicine or something else, because that is my reality. So tying it to your medicine and your career is very important.
So thank you very much. We'll conclude here. I request all the faculty PDs if they can spend some time outside. We have another session coming up. So all the attendees, you are welcome to join and connect with the people.